Welcome. Today's video is going to cover the brand new 2022 Aldebaran BFS. I'm pretty excited to see this. It got a lot of upgrades from the 2016 model, so I'm going to compare those two models, take some measurements. I'm going to go over a whole bunch of different features and some features that weren't actually advertised for the reel. And I'm also going to talk about some comparisons to Daiwa and how I'm going to do testing and such. So if you want to see a certain type of testing with this, make sure you comment down below. Keep watching and subscribe so you can see that. Alright, before I get to like a top-down view so you can see the reel better, I'm just going to go over a few different things. First thing is going to be a little history lesson. So the 2022 Aldebaran BFS, that's this one, has some upgrades. It's micro module gearing in there, MGL spool, some other things as well. The 2016 model, this has an aftermarket spool and knobs on there, but if you've seen any sort of BFS or read into BFS, you've seen and read about this reel. I think it's the most iconic BFS reel. It's still relevant today for sure. And this is the 2012 Aldebaran BFS. A little history lesson for you guys. This is arguably the first BFS reel that ever came out. I mean, you could put aftermarket spools in existing platforms, but for an out-of-the-box BFS reel, this is pretty much the first one. There's some other. There's like the Calcutta 50S, it had a shallower spool, but wasn't quite as BFS capable as this. As far as the reel, I got it from Digitaka. Took about 4 days to get from Japan to here. I know that some other retailers seem to be having some shipping delays, but also some of those users, most of those users I talked to, they're getting the XG model, which is delayed. It was delayed. It's released now. So you'll be seeing other videos popping up from other people on it. The brake dial is the biggest point of contention that I've seen from my research so far. The Tackle Tour forums, a lot of people say that brake dial looks hideous, and they also thought that the reel is going to be a little bit bigger just based on the difference in the nose plate, but it doesn't feel that much bigger. I'll take some measurements here pretty soon so you can see the actual frame differences. I'm also going to measure from like the reel seat up, just so you can see get an idea of the palm mobility and such. So I'm going to take the camera and put it face down so you can see the reel better, because you want to see that versus seeing me. So I'll get to that. Okay, so 2022 and this is 2016. Some things I'm going to do, I'm going to put the 2016 kind of to the side right now. Alright, first thing for everybody, that brake dial right here. It is more exposed than the 2016. The 2016 is very hard to turn. Like, I've spent hours fine-tuning this because sometimes it would be too loose or too tight. Now it's like you have to take your thumbnail and it's really hard to get leverage in there. So say what you want about this brake dial, at least you can get your thumb on there and you can rotate it. And it's still tight, so you're not going to accidentally hit any settings when you're palming the reel or anything. And if you need to, if you have soft thumbs or whatever the reason is that you say it hurts, you can easily just use two thumbs. Retrieve wise, it feels, I might need to put a little bit of lubrication in there. We're not 100% sure, but it does feel really smooth. It feels a little bit more solid. Of course I don't have a lure or any sort of resistance on there, but it definitely feels less hollow than the 2016 does. Like and I do have a lightweight spool in there, and I've done a lot of work to my Aldebaran, and yeah, it just, for some reason, I mean, they're both made out of magnesium, aluminum gears, but this just feels a little bit more solid. I mean, even if I turn the drag up, which that's another thing too. The clicking drag sound, I mean, you can hear that. It sounds a lot like the 2016 Aldebaran, but that drag setting, going all the way loose, I mean, it's not very loose. I mean, for bass fishing and maybe for some bluegill it would be fine, but definitely not for like small trout. I will be testing that on the water though. Hopefully I can test it on some fish. That's just one thing that I noticed. I do, Dragstar is pretty much, I mean, it's similar in design. It's a little bit different cosmetics. 80mm handle, I think let me see, I think this Aldebaran has an 84. No, they both have 80. Okay. 80mm handle like you saw in the specs that I put in there. in Japan. It's a big deal for most people. I really don't feel that it's that big of a deal nowadays. All those Daiwa Alphas, reels like the Gekabishin, Silver Creek, the Alphas RTW, they're made in Thailand and they're really nice. Yeah, this feels really good. This is one thing I noticed right when I grabbed. I did not notice this in any videos. I didn't notice it at all in any sort of pictures or anything that I've been seeing online. Once I get this spool out of here. All right, let's see if the camera can pick that up. Actually, let me zoom in a little bit. Here we go. All right, so if you can see, if you can see it where it's ported, it's not ported nearly as much as the 2016 Aldebaran spool, but those ports have little cutouts on them. What that's for is like you'd put your line wherever one of those holes are, and you would actually, the line would sit right in those little ports there, so that way you're not going to have line interference with your knot, which can hinder your very lightweight performance quite a bit. So that is one nice thing that I've seen on there. They also have a revamped braking system. It's just still the FTB braking system, but it's a little bit different how they do it. And then the MGL spool, the 3. This is like the 3rd generation of doing the MGL. Okay, another feature here. If you can see that there is a rubber O-ring around the bearing. If you can see that right there. What that's going to do, that's going to make that bearing sit nice and tight onto the spool shaft. So that way you're not get as much vibration and such. They also have on this side, I noticed, if you can see that little black speck right there, that's also a rubber O-ring, and that's to fit tightly inside of the bearing here. So that way it's basically any sort of tolerances is going to be completely sealed up by that rubber part sealing inside of the inner race of the bearing. What that's going to do is get you completely smooth, like a nice tight fit, and even on the side plate, it spins really nice. I mean, it shouldn't really it shouldn't really spin. A lot of times the spool's more wobbly in there because of the differences between the spool shaft and that bearing, like the inner diameter of the bearing, but that's crazy how it just holds it like that. So see how the magnets are this way, sitting out more, versus here, they're not sitting out as much. And I think that metal ring has something to do with how the magnetic flux works, like with the braking system. So basically this would pop in there, and as the spool spins, it's going to create a magnetic flux. It's going to create a magnetic flux that's going to have basically slow the spool down, and then as the spool slows down, there's less braking, which gives you a little bit extra distance on the back end. That's a big difference between these braking systems and some of those linear magnet systems like the Cascade Zephyr that just apply pretty much constant braking force, and they're not as adaptable to wind and skipping and such. So that's one improvement that I don't know if it's an improvement yet until I get on the water, but I don't see Shimano taking a step back in anything that they're doing. Let's see what else we got here. I will take some bearing measurements too. I don't know how this bearing's going to work because it's with the rubber O-ring on there. The company's going to have to make their own little channel to put that O-ring on for sure. The side plate bearing, there's nothing special with that, like you guys saw. Okay, now comes the part I'm going to mount it on a rod. This is the Kawasemi Rhapsody. It's made by Jackson. I just did a video on this. I'll put that link down below. It's a telescopic stream rod. It breaks down to just under 20 inches, and it's a 4'7" light powered rod. So I'll be getting some testing on this. This is the rod that I'll be doing my initial testing with the Aldebaran on. Let's just see how the palmability works. This reel seat it's not like your Fuji, one of my favorites is the micro trigger casting rod. It's really nice, but it's a little bit bigger reel seat just overall. I mean, this is standard for a trout BFS rod. Ooh, man, that feels pretty nice. It's not. I mean, it feels a lot like this. I think it just looks wider because up near the front, how the nose plate isn't pointed as much. If you can see here, it's just kind of like an optical illusion. It has a little ridge there that makes it look more pronounced, but it's just a little bit smoother design. That brake dial, I can feel it right here. I can feel the brake dial, but it's not uncomfortable. Like, I don't think it's going to cause blisters or anything, but I mean, transitioning from casting, I mean, no matter how I pawl my reels like this. Stream fishing, sometimes I'm a little bit more relaxed on the side just because there is a lot more casting to reeling motion. Adjusting the brake dial is actually pretty nice on here. I'm able to use my thumb. I'd prefer using, like, you know, going like this because you can fine tune it. There's no clicking, and that's because you can fine tune your brakes. You can just barely move it instead of being stuck between two ridges of your clicking system. So that's why it doesn't have a clicker. So I see this as a welcome feature. A lot of people think everything that clicks is better, but I don't necessarily think that. Spool tension knob. Let's see how that works. It's the same thing. There's no clicking, and I like to set mine to have barely any side-to-side play, which is a little bit harder to find that because of those rubber O-rings. But spool rotation is really smooth, and it's quiet. And how it slows down very slowly like that, and it has a little tiny bit of a back shimmy to it. You know that those bearings, and those bearings are nice, and you know that there's no friction on that spool shaft or on the spool side, so the tolerances are really nice with this spool. If there's anything else, you know, if there's certain lures that you want to see me cast, make sure you comment that down below, and other things you want to see with the reel. All right, I am going to test out the line, how that feature works. Some things I'm going to be doing with this Aldebaran, of course, do some stream trout fishing, and then get into some finesse bass fishing. I do like finesse bass fishing quite a bit. I don't do as much of it on my channel, but it is really fun. It is effective too. Some of my biggest bass actually came off using BFS gear, and walleye too. I do walleye fishing, and you know, throwing like lightweight plastics for walleye. I don't like using spinning reels, and it's really nice to be able to use a BFS reel. I can pitch around weeds and all that stuff that a lot of people, especially around me, they don't really like to fish that stuff. They like to troll around, drink beer, or you know, they do like a little bit of offshore jigging. But I like to fish heavy cover for walleye. Okay. So getting this all rigged up, let me zoom in. So getting this all rigged up here. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to snug this down. It's kind of like a slip knot that I have on here. Okay, so let's see what this looks like. I mean, I don't have it on a... Ooh, that's a nice feature. Look at that. I'll try to turn it sideways so you can see it. You don't even see where that knot's at. Let me get something with some more contrast. Okay. Yeah, that knot is completely flush, which is really nice. There's where the knot is. If you can, let me see. There's the knot, and it does not protrude at all. It might be hard to see on camera, but it creates a very, very small like vertical gap. And this is only a few winds of line on here, but it doesn't catch on the line because the spool is actually recessed. So it's just, you see that easier because it's a concentration of line. I mean, if you looked really close, you can still see the slight holes. I mean, if I keep reeling this up too, if I sit here and I just keep reeling it up, I mean, you don't even see that, and you're not really going to get that deep into your spool on casting unless using some thicker line. But that's a nice feature for sure. I'm gonna do some frame measurements just because it's kind of an optical illusion from what I'm seeing. The 2022 Aldebaran looked a lot bigger than the 2016, but holding them in hand, it's not. I think it's because this one could be a little bit shorter. But I will take some measurements, really quick measurements. You might not see all of these. I have to figure out if I'm going to edit this out or not. But from thumb bar going across, I have 73.6 millimeters for the 2020, and let's see. Oh, okay. I have 75.4 for the 2016. So I'm not going to go all the way out to like the handle nut over here. What I'm going to do is just go to like where the frame is. Because that's where you're going to be palming the reel anyway. Okay. So go here right to the side, the widest part of the side plate. come straight up. I'm getting 60.8, and these are pretty fast measurements. These are just for reference sake. And it's, I mean, you're really splitting hairs. It's 61. And so that it's definitely shorter. Let me see something too, about the same width. That brake dial coming out, that could play a little bit into the ergonomics of the reel, but not too much, I don't think. All right, now one thing I want to measure too is the distance between the level wind and the center of the spool, because your line comes off the center of the spool up top here, and it shoots out, of course, through the line guide. So the closer your line guide is to the spool, the sharper that angle is, and you're going to have more friction as far as casting, which plays a more significant role when you're casting light lures like BFS reels do. The Daiwa T-wing system, how it flips open, it widens out the line guide, so you get less restriction that way. And I'm going to take the front of the line guide, which I should be doing the back, but I don't really have access to it right now. These are just some rough measurements, like I said. Kind of lined up with the cast control knob. I don't know, about 37.2. I mean, if there's a very minor difference, I'm not really concerned. Yeah, it's about the same as far as distance, which I never had any sort of issues with the Aldebaran. So I was just seeing if they did that to, like, help with casting slightly. This is an important measurement. Using the top. And going like this. This is how much it would sit off of a, you'll see 34.7. And this is just to the nose plate here. And these aren't going to be, these are just more so for curiosity. Oh, it sits slightly lower. I mean, a little bit lower, not much. And I'll more than likely put just a list of some of these measurements. But so frame wise, they're very similar. I think this just looks a little bit wider because it's slightly shorter, and maybe the cast control knob. The brake dial. That's the only thing I can think of. So if you want to see more content, make sure you subscribe. Also, comment down below what else you want to see, what type of lures you want me to cast, what type of situations, like bass lures or trout lures, whatever. Make sure you comment down below so I can incorporate that into my future videos.